Why would a daughter force her own mother onto the streets? Just weeks after losing her husband, the question haunted Hilda Thompson as she sat alone at the edge of her bed, the silence of the house pressing down on her like the weight of 1,000 regrets. The photo frame of her late husband, Dante, stared back at her, his smile frozen in time, unaware of the storm that would follow his death. Hilda's heart still bled from the funeral, yet life had already shoved her forward, without mercy. Her daughter Harlow, once the little girl who cried when Hilda left for work, had turned ice cold. "You're not contributing," Harlow had said. "It's either a job, or you're out." How can a home turn into a prison so quickly? And how did my own daughter become the warden? It wasn't just the words, it was the way she said them. No softness, no pity, just a cold deadline. Standing in the kitchen where she had once made Harlow's school lunches, Hilda now felt like a tenant overstaying her welcome. So she packed quietly. No one noticed when she left. Not even Harlow's children, her own grandchildren, lifted their eyes from their screens. The city felt colder than she remembered. Her knees ached, her spirit was thin. At 68, with no money and no one to call, Hilda found herself searching the newspaper classifieds like it was 1985. Most jobs laughed in her face, until one ad blinked back at her from a wrinkled paper. Live-in caregiver needed for elderly billionaire. Discretion and patience required. The pay, too good to be true. But Hilda had nothing left to lose. What kind of man pays a fortune for a stranger to live with him, and why did the ad specifically mention discretion? The mansion towered over the hill like a sleeping beast, its black iron gates opened slowly as Hilda approached, suitcase trembling in her hand. The staff barely acknowledged her. She was led through velvet hallways into a room filled with sunlight and silence, and there he was. Terrence Hawthorne, a man built from silence and shadows, wrinkled, seated in a wheelchair, eyes sharp as broken glass. She introduced herself politely, hiding the crack in her voice. But the moment their eyes met, something strange passed between them. A flicker, attention, recognition. "Have we met before, Mrs. Thompson?" Terrence asked, his voice gravel and silk. She hesitated. I don't believe so. Why did I lie? Why did my heart race the moment I saw him? Because she had seen those eyes before, but in a different life. A younger one? A summer soaked in laughter. Long before Dante, before pain, before all of this. That night, as she unpacked her things in the guest suite, her hands shook. This job wasn't just survival anymore. Something about that man, that house, that question, was pulling her back into a past she thought had been buried with her youth. Who was Terrence Hawthorne? And why did I feel like the story between us had only just begun? What if the man I'm caring for is the one who broke me 48 years ago? Every morning began the same. At exactly 7:15, I brought him his black coffee, no cream, no sugar. At 8 o'clock sharp, I laid out the newspapers in the precise order Patricia had instructed me, and by 9 o'clock, his medications had to be arranged on a crystal tray with surgical precision. But despite this strict routine, something about Mr. Hawthorne's eyes unsettled me. He watched me too closely, too intently, as if my face whispered secrets to him that his memory was trying desperately to grasp. Why did he flinch when I accidentally touched his hand? I had seen his hands tremble when I adjusted his blanket. His breath hitched slightly when I stood too close. I'd told myself I was imagining things, perhaps just nerves or echoes of loneliness. But there was something in his stare, something unspoken. A storm locked behind those calm blue eyes. It haunted me more each day. One evening, while placing a glass of water beside his bed, he whispered something that stopped my heart cold. "You used to hum when you cooked, didn't you?" My hands froze. I'm sorry." He looked away quickly, feigning sleep, but the question burned in the air like incense. That detail on Lee. One man had ever said that to me, but that was a lifetime ago. Could it be? No. That boy's name was Terry, not Terrence Hawthorne. Could two people really forget each other so deeply? And yet recognize each other so icily? The next day, I did something I hadn't dared to do in years. I opened my old photo album, the one Harlow had nearly thrown in the donation box. My hands trembled as I turned each page, but when I reached the photo from 1975, there he was. Terry, lean build, messy dark hair, deep blue eyes, my first love. The boy who promised forever, but vanished without goodbye. I didn't sleep that night. My heart kept asking the same question. Was Terry Hawthorne, Terrence Hawthorne, The next morning, I was pouring his tea when I gathered the courage. "Mr. Hawthorne, were you ever called Terry?" He stiffened. The cup clinked against the saucer. "My mother used to call me that. But only one other person ever did." He turned slowly, his eyes meeting mine, something raw and broken flickering within them. "Hilda." He whispered my name like a ghost rising from ashes. "I thought I lost you forever. How did we both live lifetimes apart? Only to find each other like this." Tears blurred my vision, but I couldn't move. My knees felt weak. The room faded. For a moment, it was 1975 again. Under that willow tree. Promises, whispered, a kiss stolen. And now, nearly 5 decades later, fate had brought us face to face, me in a caregiver's uniform, him in a wheelchair. But why had he disappeared? Why now, after all this time, did he finally remember me? And just like that, everything I thought I knew about my past began to crumble. What if the person who healed your heart was the same one your child hated the most? Tension had filled the house ever since Harlow discovered her mother's secret. Hilda had never meant to fall in love again, let alone with man she served tea to for 12 years. The man in the wheelchair who barely spoke, but something changed. His silence began to feel like comfort. His eyes, like old songs she once forgot. And now, after all this time, her heart was beating again. But Harlow didn't understand. Why does she hate the only man who ever made me feel alive again? It happened one evening after dinner. Harlow stormed into the living room, her voice sharp, her hands trembling. "You're humiliating yourself. Falling for a client? What kind of mother are you?" The words cut deeper than she expected. But Harlow wasn't just angry, she was broken. Could this rage be hiding something deeper? Something I never saw. Terrence didn't flinch. He simply watched, calm but firm. Then he wheeled forward and placed a small photograph on the table. Hilda turned pale. It was Dante, her ex-husband, and another woman, holding a baby. Harlow's lips quivered. "He lied to you, Mom. He had another life. I found out years ago. But I stayed silent. I didn't want you to fall apart. Why would a daughter hide her father's betrayal?" For over a decade, the room went still. Hilda's knees gave way, and she sat down wordlessly. Her past had collapsed. But in the wreckage, she saw something: Terrence sitting beside her, not saying anything, just holding her hand like no one ever had. For days, Harlow avoided them both. Then one night, she entered her mother's room and whispered, "I'm sorry." The pain had made her blind. Seeing her mother glow again, smiling while reading, humming while cleaning, reminded her of who she used to be before Dante broke her. Harlow realized her mother deserved love too. What if forgiveness wasn't about weakness, but courage? Weeks passed and change came softly. Terrence proposed in the simplest way, just a ring on the teacup one morning. Hilda cried for 5 minutes straight, and Harlow, she planned the wedding herself. The final scene, Hilda in a soft white sari. Terrence in a dark gray suit, his wheelchair decorated with fresh roses. In the backyard under the golden sunlight, vows were exchanged. Harlow stood beside them, teary-eyed, holding the guest book, smiling at the mother who had finally learned to live for herself. Voiceover from Hilda, at 68. "I thought I had nothing left. But life was just beginning. We break, but we heal. And sometimes, the heart knows exactly where to return." If this chapter hit your heart, subscribe now, because chapter 4 will shake your soul. Real stories, raw emotions. Just click the bell, and I promise, we're just getting started.